All right, before we get started here, I want to remind you that this is a big girl and big boy podcast. That means Dr. Rob and I just might swear a time or two. So if that offends you, well, you better just stop listening now. If not, well, you can just keep on listening. We're going to have a lot of fun. Betfred Sportsbook prevents the Doc Talk podcast. Download the app today in the Apple or Google Play stores. New signups in Iowa, Arizona, and Colorado. You get a $20 free bet. That's right, a $20 free bet when you use the promo code DocTalk. That's a new signups only using the promo code DocTalk in Arizona, Iowa, and Colorado. Betfred Sportsbook is expanding all over the country, and they are operational in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Louisiana, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and now Washington. Also, a big special thanks to Husker Hounds for their support. 2 locations in the Omaha area and online at huskerhounds.com. And attorney Connor Orr. He's an expert litigator and a registered sports agent. That means if you have a business and you want to navigate that name, image, and likeness stuff, you can call Connor. He can help you out and set you on the right course. Connor at ohflaw.com. Also visit the website ohflaw.com. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button right up there. Like our Facebook page. Follow Dr. Rob on Twitter at DocTalkSports. You can follow me, Travis Justice, at Travis Creates. And if you have a question for Dr. Rob, make sure to send it to doctalksports@gmail.com. This is the Doc Talk podcast presented by Betfred Sportsbook, 2022, episode 25. Dr. Rob representing. Look at that Husker Hound shirt you got on.
It's a good look. It is like the most comfortable T-shirt ever.
You know, my wife took mine already because she likes to sleep in it. You know, because I'm a fatty and I wear like the big double X or big triple X.
It's a comfy T-shirt. That's the thing. There you go. I love it.
But the cool one about that is that many people may or may not know this, but Scott Strunk, owner of Husker Hounds, is a veteran. He served in the Persian Gulf War. When he got home from the war, he said, fuck it, I'm going to sell T-shirts.
There you go.
And you know what? He's been selling T-shirts since the 90s.
He has been doing this a while.
Yeah.
But, I mean, God, it's a great his stores are great. I mean, if you're, I'd say Husker fan, but if you're a sports fan at all, because he'll get stuff for anybody. I mean, I got Joel Wilkes, former Husker left guard on the pipeline. He lives in Portland, Oregon. One of his kids is a huge Oregon Ducks fan. And so he needed to get an Oregon Ducks parka, and Scott hooked him up with that. He'll get anything you need. But, I mean, he always has some Iowa stuff. He's got some Iowa State stuff. He's always got Creighton stuff. So, I mean, if you like sports, if you live in the area, he's got you covered.
I noticed you shaved this week, man.
I did.
You do that just for me?
I'm trying to look good for you.
So in a couple weeks, we're going to be talking about Manscaped. Have you used your Manscaped stuff yet?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Your balls will thank you. And we'll have a lot more to talk about that in a couple weeks. But yeah, I mean, that is, I mean, you went with the head, you went with the face, you went with everything today.
Yeah, but I kind of shave everything usually.
Yeah, I just did my cheeks and my, I didn't do the head today because I cut myself yesterday, so I got to let it like heal up.
Yeah, got a little scar.
Yeah, because I've got like the Shar-Pei thing in the back of my head where it's got the wrinkles, and you know it's hard to get in between those crevices every once in a while.
It could just be you're old and fat. I mean,
well, there's a lot of truth to that, man. There is a lot of truth to that.
I'm right there with you. So
now you heard me say in the open to call your state senator, and the reason I said this is there was an article in the Omaha World Herald yesterday about the casinos that are getting ready to open up in the state of Nebraska. I think the one down in Lincoln is going to be ready to go maybe by October. But they're not going to have a sports book yet because Nebraska has not come to an agreement on what their sports betting is going to be. Right now, you cannot bet online, right? You can't use the Betfred Sports app like we want you to do and go to Iowa to do, or if you're closer to the Colorado border.
Which is probably, I mean, I would guess most people who bet online, that's what they're doing right
Rob,
now.
I can tell you right now.
I say betting online. Most people who are betting on sports either want to do it that way or are doing it that way.
First of all, I was around when Iowa launched its sports betting, right? And right away, they went with online gambling. I can show you the numbers. Next week, I'll pull out the numbers. It's astonishing in that I would say 96 to 97% of the sports wagering handle in the state of Iowa is all online. People don't go to the book. They don't want to go to the casino. They want to sit in their house, and they want to do it as the game's going. I mean, there's in-play wagering, all sorts of stuff on the Betfred Sports
Do you know what
app.
that is?
It's convenience. It's consumer-driven.
That's a lot of tax revenue for the state of Iowa.
It's a huge amount. We're talking in the billions, right? And not the revenue they get, but what's wagered. And that's why Nebraska is so ass backwards when it comes to thinking about this. They're overthinking it. When legalized sports gambling became available, Iowa was ready to launch within a couple of months. Nebraska is saying their books may not be ready until 2023. That's too long. That is not consumer driven. It's not.
It's not, but I think you've still got enough people who are kind of, I don't want to say pushing back on it, but nobody was willing to make this a smooth process.
They weren't, because
and you do have people that I guess that's probably the best way to put it. You had people, and I love Coach Osborne, but I know he was pushing back on this from a political standpoint to try and make this as hard as possible.
I don't know why. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. You can watch Behind the Point Spreads Wednesday night with us at 8:00. And if you go to the analytical approach, okay, it's not, put one on red or one on black and craps. But I'm telling you, if you do your homework, it's probably, I'd rather bet on a game than bet blackjack or poker or slot machines or fucking Keno's a joke. I mean, think about it. Nebraska's so moral that we'll have Keno, but it's the worst fucking odds ever.
And that's the thing that cracks me up is it's sort of the half-assedness of it, or the hypocrisy that you're going to allow some gambling, but not all gambling. I remember there's a number. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Milt Tenneper used to go down to Big Red Keno. I think it was Big Red Keno at the time. Either way, there was some place in Lincoln that had Keno. And every day at lunch, he would put down for his Keno would be the starting offensive lineman's numbers.
Really?
Yeah.
Did he ever win?
Yeah, like one day, and it was actually in 94, so it was the actual pipeline. He hit it using the pipeline's numbers.
Nice.
Yeah, so he did a 56, 76, 54, 66, 72.
That's impressive. You still remember everybody's number.
I don't know. That's kind of a weird football thing that gets ingrained in your head.
True. And when you're over and over and over again, it's just over and over.
These are the guys it's what you're looking at every day. But
hey, we're drinking beer today. And Steve Swanstrom from Centrist Federal Credit Union, the president and CEO of
he
Centrist
road tripped it for us.
He road tripped it. It was because his daughter goes to, she's in the School of Dentistry. She's going to be a dentist. She's at Marquette University. It was her white coat ceremony. That's a big deal, right? The white coat ceremony is a big deal.
It is. It's kind of any medical professional school. It's kind of the entrance ceremony.
So, and that's when you really got to start feeling like a doctor, because you got the white coat and you feel like all important. It's got your name on it.
It is, except it's kind of this truncated little shorter white coat that just screams you're not fully fledged yet.
I didn't know that. So so when you're walking down the hall, the doctors and nurses go, you're in training.
Med student right there, PA student, physical therapy student, dentistry student. Yeah, it's like you see that shorter coat it's basically like it's a white sport coat is what it is, and it just screams newbie.
So he actually brought a bunch of beer back this week. We're trying two that he specifically brought back for you. And you're drinking the first one, which is called Fuck COVID.
So, Fuck COVID 2.0. So I think it's good for Omicron as well.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's Delta and Omicron.
Now, that's a hazy IPA, right?
It is. So this is from Ale Asylum out of Madison, Wisconsin. We're drinking with Wisconsin beers. The thing that's funny is that if you look at the title, it literally, by the way, sorry, Dave, it says fuck COVID, and that there's a little red asterisk there. You go down to the bottom of the can and it says also hoarders. I know, I just thought that was funny, but I mean, the can's cracking me up here, but it's a tasty hazy IPA.
Well, I'm ready to try that because we got a 6-pack out here. The other one, he was thinking of you because he's heard you on the podcast, mentioned that you have not one, but 2 Great Danes. And he saw this and he goes, you know what? I have to buy this. It's the Great Dane.
Hey, hold that up to the camera.
It's the Great Dane German Pilsner. and it's from Great Dane Brewing Company. And I tell you
so
what,
there's literally a Great Dane Brewing Company.
Yeah, and I tell you what, it's in Madison, Wisconsin. It says crisp, classic, traditional. It's 5.25 ABV, and I like this. This is really, really. Rob's reaching for one right now.
I'm gonna give it a try.
He's reaching for
I'm
one
gonna
right
put it in
now.
my Betfred boot koozie.
Yeah.
I want it to stay cold.
Well, you should. I've got it in the Yeti, but I didn't put any ice in there. And as you've
The
seen,
Yeti works though.
people are going to see our studio keeps getting fancier and fancier. We just recorded the Doc's Diagnosis presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. Those will be coming up on YouTube. But the studio is going through a transformation.
There's a lot of tech in here.
There's a lot of shit going on in here. But my son Owen, who's the visionary behind this whole project, has informed me that we're getting a fridge in here. So so he's informed me that there will be a fridge.
Oh, and strong work, buddy.
Yes, that's a glass front.
That's a tasty Pilsner, by the way.
It is. It's very tasty. So, yeah, what do you think of the fridge getting in there?
We're going to do a glass front
we're going
fridge?
to do a glass front fridge. We're going to have all the beer stocked in here, so we don't have to go into the furnace room where we have all the beer stocked right now.
The GIMP room of Trav's basement.
Well, that's what it is, right? But yeah, so and I've got more to try next week. So we've got a completely different brewery to try next week.
You know what? We've gone holy cow. We've gone a few months without actually buying our own beer, I think.
Oh, I know. And I've got, I'm running behind. We got to get some photos out because I promised some people that if you send us beer, we'll take a picture with it and autograph it and send you the photo. So I still got to get some of those photos out.
We will do that.
We will do that.
Promise.
I'm running a little bit behind right now. But before we get into the Nebraska game, we were recording on Monday, which is Labor Day. So Scott Frost had his news conference today as the Huskers get ready for the next game. But I have a new favorite head coach in college football. You know who that is?
Mark Farley.
Nope. Ryan Carty. Ryan Carty from Delaware. This was after Delaware beat Navy yesterday 14-7.
How does it feel?
Well, it feels amazing. I'm just so happy for these guys. All the work we put in. Man, proud to be a fucking Blue Hen, I tell you that much. Sorry about the F word. I'm proud.
On live television,
oh my
baby.
God, that was awesome.
I'm proud to be a fucking Blue Hen.
That is awesome. Oh, that kicks ass.
Yeah. So, I mean, here he is.
Oh, that is. I missed this.
Yes. Here, we got to hear it one more time.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Well, it feels amazing. I'm just so happy for these guys. All the work we put in. Man, proud to be a fucking Blue Hen, I tell you that much. Sorry about the F word. I'm proud.
See,
he's going to have to issue an apology.
You know what? He said he's sorry. The good thing is it was on cable television, so they didn't really even have to beep it, right? I mean, that's where people get confused.
Yeah, that is true.
You know, it's only if it's on a public airwave if you have to bleep it. So
yeah, if it's cable, you're paying for it.
Well, it's funny because when we first started cussing on this podcast, people were like, "You're going to get in trouble with the FCC." I'm like, "No, we're not." Because this is not public airwaves. You choose to listen to this, right? And that's essentially what you choose. You know that we're going to say the F word. We're going to say hashtag sorry, Dave. And
we tell you.
Yes, up front we say, hey, we're going to swear.
Fucking Blue Hens.
Fucking Blue Hens.
That's awesome. You know what? You know that's going to be what's today, Monday?
Yeah.
You know that's going to be a T-shirt by tomorrow.
Proud to be a fucking Blue Hen.
Yeah, I mean, it's just literally next weekend, there's going to be people all over at the University of Delaware's football games walking around in T-shirts that say fucking Blue Hens on them.
You know what?
And if nobody's making those yet, they ought to be. And if anybody hears this podcast, they probably are now.
And by the way, people keep on asking, yes, our T-shirts are coming. You got to give me a little bit of time. I got to get these things produced. You're going to be able to buy some T-shirts here coming because, they're going to be super cool. Maybe, hell, we're getting close enough to winter. We could actually do sweatshirts as we get in some hoodies. We can go all in on it. Rob, you're taking some beating on Twitter, okay? And people ask me, oh, my God, Travis Justice is posting this on Dr. Rob's account. First of all, yes, I post the report card.
But I give you the grades.
You give me the grades. And, for being the savant that you are, the genius that you are, people say your math doesn't add up when you do the grades.
Okay, so here's the thing. The overall is not a average of each individual grade, because a lot more goes into a game than just those components. I'm grading those components, and I got a reason why I give them the grades. We can go through this here in a second. But that overall is not like, here's these components, and here's the overall average. Listen, if it was just that, you guys, okay, the listeners are smart enough. They know math. They can average that shit themselves, okay? Like, my overall grade, and I get it, like the lowest is my overall, because, and I had to like send this out. I sent this to like 30 people who kept questioning it over and over and over again all throughout the day, Sunday, and into today.
People who are OCD, is driving them nuts.
It was. And it's like I kept telling people, listen, here's the deal. This takes into account coaching decisions. Oh, I mean, kind of like an overall tone, the quality of the opponent. And one of the other things I put in there that I kind of factor in is, after watching this game, what's the gestalt feel for this team right now? Where do I see this team going over the next few weeks? That goes into the overall. And that doesn't mean that there weren't good things that happened. And the individual grades might be, frankly, really good, and the overall's not so good. The opposite might be true. The individual components might not be all that good, but I might have a good feeling about the direction we're going. I mean, take Nebraska last year. After the Michigan game, the Oklahoma game, the Ohio State game, people were walking away from those games going like, God, we had the turnovers sucked. The special teams blunders killed us. Some of these coaching decisions makes you want to beat your head against the wall. But I got a pretty good feel about this team. And man, if they just kind of get their shit together and clean up a few mistakes, they're going to be great. I mean, you felt good about that going forward aspect of last year's team in a lot of ways after a lot of games. This one kind of reflects the opposite of that. So yeah, it's lower than the average of what is listed there above it, but don't, that overall has nothing to do, well, it's got a lot to do, but the overall is not an average of the individuals that are listed.
Because if you took everything that we put into account, this report card would be like 10 or 15 lines long. We don't have the space for that. A lot of people are surprised that you gave the running game a C and the offensive line a C+. Now, that's because Nebraska ran for a lot of yards, and Anthony Grant had one hell of a game doing a lot of things on his own. Today, Scott Frost talked about the offensive line and the running game, because you also gave the offensive line a C+. Let's compare your grade to what Scott Frost had to say about the running game and the O-line.
I don't really want to single out the O-line, because to me it's the run game in general. And I will say this, the running backs played well. Everybody that got in played well. Running backs make O-lines look better, and O-lines make running backs look better. And sometimes receivers and quarterbacks are part of that too. You know, the first half we gave up 2 sacks, and that was all we gave up. But that 2 is too many. I thought one of the promising things to see was to see us control the ball when we needed to at the end of the game and just be able to run it. But that's a team effort, not one person or one unit.
Thoughts on that?
I appreciate the fact that I think he's essentially saying, I mean, if you want to read between the lines there, he's saying the offensive line did not play well, and the rushing yardage came from the fact that the running backs ran really well.
Then why'd you give him a C?
Because the offensive line did not play and block well.
I get that, but you gave the offensive line a C+, and you gave the running game a C.
Let's go with the running game first. Okay. I gave him a C because, A, it was not consistent. A lot of yardage came on chunk plays. A lot of those chunk plays happened because we've got a couple of really, really good young running backs in Anthony Grant and A.J. Allen. Those guys are really, really good football players.
And here's what Scott had to say about his running back.
All right.
I thought the vision of the running backs in general, everybody that got a chance, was really good. They saw some cracks and hit some seams to get extra yards that were hard to see. thought Anthony's patience was really good on a couple of the runs, you know, not just running blindly up in there, but waiting for blocks to develop. And with a lot of these guys, if we can get them on the second level, we have a chance to make big plays now. And it's kind of up to the O-line and the coaching staff to get us in the right place and the right schemes to make sure that some of these backs can get in space.
Thoughts on that?
Fuck COVID, Travis.
Look at you.
Having
You're
another.
This is
And
your
hoarders.
third.
Second, third.
It's your third. I'm still on my first.
Yeah, but I've been here a while. We were recording Doc's Diagnosis before this.
Speaking of Doc's Diagnosis, presented by Central Federal Credit Union, you can watch it on YouTube. First installment of this week's will be on Tuesday morning. There'll be another one on Wednesday and Thursday.
So anyway, okay, let's go back. Just running.
So he liked his running backs better than you like the running backs.
No, I loved the running backs. I thought they did great. But a running game is far, far more than just the running backs. And so things I'm taking into consideration here with this grade is one, who we're playing. This is I keep saying it's an FCS team, but it's a Missouri Valley FCS team. And when you're a middle of the pack Missouri Valley FCS team, you're probably still pretty good. You're not North Dakota State. You're not Northern Iowa. You're not South Dakota or South Dakota State. But you're a pretty damn good football team. And I think North Dakota's they're not a bad team. That being said, if Nebraska plays North Dakota State right now, I think Nebraska gets beat. I really do. You got to keep in mind kind of some big picture stuff here with Nebraska versus North Dakota. This game was a draw midway through the third quarter. That was 17-17. Now, Nebraska scored 3 touchdowns there late to pull it away. But even if you go back and look at the stats, North Dakota still had I think it was almost a 12-minute time of possession advantage. I think it was 36-24. I mean, that's essentially 1 quarter's worth of time of possession advantage in this game. That's a huge stat. And it's really disconcerting for me when I look at Nebraska going forward that an FCS school can come into Lincoln and hold on to the ball for 36 minutes. That's amazing in my mind. Kudos to them, but it's a little bit of an indictment on Nebraska and Nebraska's running game to be able to put sustained drives together. So things I did not see that I need to see for Nebraska to have a better running game grade are sustained drives. I need to see some consistency in the running game. I love a good chunk play. I love seeing Anthony Grant go 40 yards for a touchdown. But I want to see drives where Anthony Grant goes 5 yards, 7 yards, 4 yards, 6 yards, play action pass for 12, and then Anthony busts one for 20 into the end zone at the end of the series to score. And that's not what you're seeing. You're seeing Anthony Grant go for 2 yards, 2 yards, 1 yard, 2 yards, and every one of those plays are ones where he's making all the yardage himself. And then you'll see this on the Doc's Diagnosis. I don't want to get into it too much, but then you'll see the offensive line essentially get beat all across the line of scrimmage. And because you've got this pretty much this absolutely fabulous running back in Anthony Grant, he's got enough athleticism and vision that he sees an opening, bounces it to the outside, and outruns the defense to the end zone. That's not a strong running game where you've got good, consistent blocking up front by the offensive line. That's Anthony Grant making a play where there wasn't one. And so that's why I gave him a C. Anthony Grant and his athleticism, A.J. Allen and his athletic ability does not equate to a good running game. It equates to the fact that we've got a couple of freaking ballers at running back that can make shit happen when there isn't anything up front, and the offensive line is playing very inconsistently right now. That's why they get a C.
And then, so the running game is C, the offensive line is C+.
Which then you would think I probably ought to have the offensive line downgraded to like a D or an F. again, I'm going to put them at a C. And then hold on. And then I bumped it to a plus.
Okay.
Because the one area where I still see that's a little surprising to me, especially with what we heard during the off-season practice reports, is the fact that Nebraska's pass blocking is actually not bad. Yet, I mean, now we're talking Northwestern and North Dakota. So I don't know what we're going to see I don't know what Georgia Southern has up front. I don't know what we're going to see with Oklahoma. I don't know what we're going to see with Michigan State and Wisconsin and Iowa, so on and so forth. But my worry is that we're actually seeing some pretty mediocre run blocking. There's the C grade. The plus comes from the fact that the pass blocking's been okay. Now, I know they gave up 2 sacks. Well, one of those sacks we cover in the diagnosis, so I'm not going to go into it.
It's the fumble
here. It's the strip sack fumble. I think that was one where the coaches completely set the offensive line up for failure, and we'll go over that in the doc's diagnosis here in a couple of days.
So you gave the passing game a C+.
Again, you had some huge plays. I mean, you had that huge third down conversion second half. I think Nebraska was up 24-17 at the time, buried deep in their own territory. And Casey Thompson completed, I think it was a 30 or 31 yarder to Trey Palmer. The pass was just a pinch underthrown. It was essentially a jump ball. Trey Palmer went up, got the catch, came down. Big first down, got them out of the shadow of their goalposts and put Nebraska in a good position to go on down the field and score. You had a lot of those same chunk plays in the passing game. Again, my problem is that it's not this consistency that you would like to see. Casey still occasionally overthrows guys. Receivers get hit in the hands and don't make the catch. I want to see more consistency. Again, it's sort of one of these, the C+ I give the passing game. In my mind, that's sort of like when your kid goes off to college and they're like, C's get degrees. That's what this one is that it's, okay, hey, you know what? You passed. You didn't fail the test. You got a passing grade. And I'll even give you a C+ for these big chunk plays. But, God, we got to see more consistency here. And we got to see, and even though the one sack I put on the coaching staff for putting the offensive line in a bad position, the other one can go on the offensive line. I want to see better pass protection. I want to see a little bit more consistency with both Casey and the wide receivers. And we haven't seen that yet. It may be coming, but that's something that they need to do to get a better grade.
Well, I think the reason you're not seeing that consistency is because you're not seeing the consistency with the coaching staff.
I love the guys I have on my offensive staff. They're bright. They're doing a great job coaching. I think you can see the improvement by position. We're still figuring it out together, and the team's still figuring it out together, and the players are still figuring it out together. And in some ways, I thought we made some big strides from last week, but there's still a lot to fix.
You can hear it in his voice. He's under stress, man.
He is, and I can't remember. It was either right before that clip or right after that clip. Scott made a comment where he said we need to as coaches, we need to communicate better.
And today he talked about how Mark Whipple, he clarified Mark Whipple called the game in the second half. He clarified that today, and he said that's an example of communicating better.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's a good thing. Again, it's a good thing against an FCS team.
But what about Michigan? What about Wisconsin?
And that's where I get worried is what happens when you get a team with better – I mean, you get a well-coached team with, instead of a bunch of 1- and 2-star kids, it's a bunch of 4- and 5-star kids.
So you gave the defense a C. And before you go into the defense, I'm going to go to an email we got from Michael. Michael sent us an email, and if you want to send us an email, you can do that, doctalksports@gmail.com. That's doctalksports@gmail.com. But Michael writes in, this is watching Eric Schnander last week. He said, I just watched an Eric Schnander interview. He said, tackling is a hard thing to handle because you can't tackle and recreate open space tackles in practice unless you're going to tackle the ones and we would all feel terrible if one of our starters got hurt. He then wanted to say, you have to do a great job at drills. Michael goes on to say, I read that Osborne would routinely put the ones versus the ones in practice, and tackling was live. Is this accurate? What was your experience?
It wasn't one of these things where I remember the Mark Banker comment, I bet Iowa's practices are bloodbaths.
Yes.
It's not like our practices in the 1990s were bloodbaths. But you went 3 days a week with, I say full pads. 1 day a week was true full pads. 2 days a week were helmets and shoulder pads, which was basically full speed without cut blocking. You wouldn't tackle below the waist, and you wouldn't cut block a guy below the waist if you didn't have pants and pads on. But otherwise, we were going full speed 3 days a week, every day. We had some very, very good scout teams, and then we also did. You had a lot of ones versus twos. You did goal line drill on the offensive line, defensive line. 2 or 3 days a week, you had one-on-one, both run and pass blocking against each other. That was live. So you did have a lot of live contact. It wasn't this nonstop ones against ones, but you had a lot of live contact, and you had a lot of good on good. And that does make a huge difference. You have to do that at some point. You have to have that worked in. And I'm still kind of a firm believer in the fact that there's a degree of physical conditioning that comes from contact that will actually decrease injury rates over time.
Well, ironically, this was Scott Frost today at his news conference.
Get better right away.
Consistency, Sam. When you watch the game, even me being on the headset with those guys, we'll knock a run out for one and then one for -2. We've had too many that have creased, and that's just detail. We're going to do a little more ones versus ones this week. Some ways I feel as a head coach watching, the defense needs to see those plays being run at the speed that the one offense can give them. And even though we don't get perfect looks on either side and trying to give each other a look, I think it's important to continue to do those things. So we'll do a little more of that. We weren't able to do much of that last week. Coming off a trip overseas.
So they're going to go ones against ones this week.
All right, there we go. Giddy up. I like it.
It's solved just like that. Boom, Michael. That was a good email, Michael.
That was a great question. Which, I get asked that on occasion, and it's something I've always worried about. That, I'm not saying you've got to have these never-ending 3-hour-long full-speed ones against ones practices. But you got to have some physical contact, and you got to have guys slamming into each other a little bit. Otherwise, there's a component of this that gets lost that you don't have when you actually show up to play the game.
So you gave the special teams a B-. We actually go into a special teams play on the doctor's diagnosis presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. You'll be able to see that on YouTube.
And a lot of people bagged on me on this one, too, because they were like, you had a missed field goal. You had the Wyatt Lever play at the end. Again, that's one of those, that's sort of an awareness
You
issue.
had the squib / onside kick, what was really...
Well, they tried a squib, and I do not disagree with doing a squib in that situation.
Can I have a fuck COVID, please?
You want to fuck COVID?
I want to fuck COVID, please. No, I don't want to fuck COVID because that sounds kind of weird, but I would...
That totally weirded me out there. It's a good beer. It's a good beer. From our friends at Ale Asylum.
Ale Asylum. There we go.
On the special teams, the thing I liked about special teams is one, punting's still very nice and consistent. They're booming it. He did make a field goal. PATs were excellent. You saw the block, and it's all of a sudden we're seeing a little bit more, at least in some areas, some consistency here. And you're seeing Nebraska in a position to try and do some things, i.e., let's go after a kick. Let's block a kick. And then, again, this was one of the diagnoses, which you mentioned. But the way they lined it up, you could tell, hey, we're going to try and block one of these today. And that's something that you now have the personnel and I think the coaching that on special teams, you're going to see Nebraska very specifically trying to make plays on special teams as opposed to just trying to not fuck shit up. And I think that's what we saw last year and the previous few years was Nebraska trying not to screw things up when they went out there on special teams. Now you're seeing them, they've got a little bit of a different mentality in which they're going out there and they're like, well, let's go make a damn play. Let's go block a kick. Let's go get a big return.
Well, at the end of the day, special teams can be the difference between winning and losing.
Oh, shit.
Look at Florida State and LSU.
I mean, that was huge. I mean, Florida State blocked a kick and won the game for them. Earlier on the previous drive, it was the exact drive there. Florida State had actually recovered a fumbled punt, and then they gave it right back to LSU, and LSU went 99 yards for a touchdown. But again, those plays are huge, and they can be incredibly impactful. And I think Nebraska now is at least willing to try and do some stuff on special teams when prior to this year, it was just, we're going to go out there and not try and cost us a win. And that's huge. And that's why I gave them such a high grade.
And Scott Frost gave him a high grade too. And this is him talking about the special teams at today's news conference. Well, maybe not.
I feel good. I think we got.
I feel good
our
too.
Our punter has been really good. Our punt protection has been good. Kickoff coverage was good. There was one that almost got out. Cooper Jewett made a great play and was in the right place. There's a lot of effort and detail going on. There's a lot of situations that can come up in special teams. And if you watch games around the country again this week, there's special teams plays that won and lost games for people. A couple of the things that happened the other day were sloppy mistakes that I know have been covered several times, and kind of rare, a couple rare things, but we need to be smart enough to make the right play when those things happen.
He mentions, Iowa's a perfect example of special teams. Their punter won the game for them. I mean, think about it. Iowa scored a field goal and two safeties.
The defense outscored the offense.
I've never seen that before, but Torrey Taylor, who was the special teams player of the week in the Big Ten, he punted 10 times, Rob. 10 fucking times, and I think 6 were inside the 10-yard line.
He's like icing that leg for a day.
But if you go 6 inside the 10, that's you're flipping the field.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it put them in a position where they got 2 safeties. I mean, that's absolutely huge for a team. And again, I mean, you can talk about some of the issues Iowa's having on offense right now, but the bottom line is special teams makes a difference, and it did make a difference last year in a lot of those games for Nebraska. It's one area that I feel like is getting cleaned up. And again, this is part of the reason.
Well, Bill Bush is a big reason to that.
It is, and that's part of the reason why I gave him, again, a pretty good grade. What did I say, B-?
Yes, B-.
So it's, some people were like, God, you still saw some mistakes out there. And I'm just like, yeah, but we're doing things better than we did in the past. We've got some, again, Scott touched on it. The punting has been great. The punt protection has been great. The punt coverage has been great. You're seeing some good things on special teams now that I haven't seen in the past. And it's one of the areas of the team right now that I look at when you talk about big picture going forward. Offense, defense, special teams. When you look at this Nebraska team, the special teams is the one area that I look at. I'm like, I think these guys are going to be okay.
Okay, I'm going to ask you something because I'm going to play one more from Scott Frost. Yes, we're playing a lot of sound in this because I think listening to Scott, and you're kind of like me, you kind of read between the lines. You can hear it in his voice or he says something, you're like, okay, this is what he's really trying to say. He said this after the game. And you could tell he was flustered after the game. You could tell he was bothered about the time of possession. You could tell he was bothered about the 17 because he's hearing it, right? The boos were out. The boos. You were at the game. You heard the boos. We'll get into boos because I don't have a problem with boos. Some people do. But here's Scott. I want to know if you agree with this.
As a head coach, you got to balance, telling them they're a great team to keep the confidence up with being honest with them and making sure we're continuing to get better. This team can be a great team. It's not right now, and that was my message to them. So that puts us in a perfect position to have the potential to be good, but know that we got a lot of work to do and a lot of things to fix.
Okay, I agree with one part of it, and that is they're not a great team right now. What I don't agree with them is this team can't be a great team. I watched Georgia over the weekend. I watched Alabama over the weekend. Those are great football teams.
I watched the Notre Dame-Ohio State game. That was a couple of pretty damn good teams.
Yes. I mean, that's great. I mean, I guess my level of great is completely – Nebraska can probably be a good football team. It can't be a great football team like those
Define
teams.
good. I mean, give me a win-loss record.
No,
like if you'd look at Nebraska this year and be like, yeah, that was good. It's not great, but it was good.
7-8 wins.
Okay.
With the schedule.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now, is that if they win 7 or 8, I'll be that was pretty good.
But that doesn't necessarily keep his job. But when you throw the word great out there, when I hear the word great, I'm thinking exceptional. I'm thinking spectacular. I watched Georgia. Oh, my God.
And the thing that's always interesting to me is that I've seen teams that I think have a lot of potential, have some great athletes. I'm not writing Nebraska off athletically here. But I mean, from a coaching and developmental standpoint, that's where the worry is for me. Because I look at these guys, and I mean, let's back up. I'm going to go back to, I'm blanking on what year it was, but it was the Bo Pelini season where they went and played Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game, and boy, God just absolutely nuked. It was at the Monty Ball game where he had like 900 yards rushing in that game alone. And everybody was basically like, the world's ending. This is the end of Nebraska football.
2012.
Okay. And now, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they go and play Georgia in the bowl game and beat them?
Yeah.
And that was a Georgia team that had lost the SEC title game in an absolute brawl against Alabama. It was basically a run game duel between Georgia and Alabama in that SEC title game. And I remember everybody was just like, oh my God, we are so horrible. There's no way we could match up with anybody else in the country. Look at Georgia and Alabama over here. These guys are insane. We went and played Georgia and beat them in the bowl game. I mean, those kind of things happen in football, and so I'm not ready to discount these guys from an athletic standpoint, from a capability standpoint, but I'm not seeing the coaching right now to see that happen. And I don't know, maybe they turn a corner and do some good things here, but if you look at this Nebraska team right now, you're seeing them struggle against a Northwestern team and losing to a Northwestern team that like Nebraska finished at the bottom of the Big Ten last year with a 3-9 record. You see Nebraska come out, and again, I get it. They won by 3 touchdowns against North Dakota on Saturday, but that's an FCS team that statistically did some just mind-blowing things against Nebraska, especially in the terms of time of possession, and was basically completely standing in there and trading punches with us well into the third quarter. I mean, if you want a point of comparison, Fordham traded punches for about a quarter and a half, and by the time you got about halfway through the second quarter, Nebraska had kind of established dominance and kind of started blowing it open.
Well, up next for Nebraska is Georgia Southern. Not Georgia, but Georgia Southern. They had a big win over Morgan State. I have no idea where the hell Morgan State is. They beat Morgan State 59-7.
I believe it's Kentucky, but
is it? I have no clue. But they had 367 yards passing, 137 yards rushing. It's 504 yards of total offense. All their scoring took place from the second quarter on. Kyle Van Treese, the quarterback, 29.
He's from Buffalo.
Is he one of Lance Leipold's guys, huh?
Yeah, he played against Nebraska last year.
Okay.
For when Nebraska played Buffalo.
So 29 of 46, 367, 4 TDs, 1 INT. So you're going to see a pass-happy team is what I'd say.
Probably. And he's also going to come into Lincoln and be like, oh, yeah, I've seen these.
But you know what?
Before.
Being a quarterback, having played in the environment, because
you would think he wouldn't get rattled.
Yes. Now, other guys might, but if you have a quarterback at least to calm your guys down, that's got to be somewhat of an advantage.
I think it helps a lot. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I was trying to do a little research on both Georgia Southern. They got, who's it? Chip Hilton is their coach?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's the U.S. It's the former USC coach. Clay Hilton.
Okay.
Clay Hilton. I said Chip Hilton. I'm going full Pac-12 here, combining names.
It is Clay Hilton.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which I actually thought he was a pretty good coach. He was one of those guys that just the USC alumni and administration for some reason hated the dude. It's just 3 out of 4 years he's punching out 10-win seasons.
He's the same age as us. I didn't know that.
Okay, that's us getting old. That's not coaches getting
Actually,
younger.
I'm older than he is. He was born in 72. So he's older than you too.
Well, no, I was born in 71.
Oh, yeah,
right
so you're older
end.
than him. Yeah,
right
so
at the end.
you're older than him.
You don't cheat me a year.
Sorry, man. Your birthday's coming up too, isn't it?
December.
Yeah,
I get old again.
Yeah, then you'll be the big 5'2".
5'1".
Oh, you're 50 right now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to be 52 this month.
That's because you're really freaking
Jesus,
old.
man. Why do you got to rub it in like
I'll
that?
get a shovel. I'll help you dig that 6-foot hole.
What should we do for my birthday? Should we go to should we go to a brewery? Should we go to Cross Drain?
Oh, we got some good ones. Cross Drain's always good.
Yeah. Can't go wrong
Yes,
with
we should. I will buy you a beer.
that. Wow, that's really nice of you, man.
But our guy Jeff will probably comp it anyway.
Well, you know what? I'm kind of bummed that Nebraska fans aren't going to Madison this year because
they could fuck COVID.
They could fuck COVID, and if you want to fuck COVID, you could go to
Dave.
You could go to the Ale Asylum Brewery in Madison, Wisconsin.
It's a tasty beer.
It is.
I like it.
Yeah. So I mean,
the can alone's worth it. I just like the fact that they asterisk the title and you look at the bottom. Also hoarders.
So the other big news. So I guess my point with Nebraska is Georgia Southern's great, whatever, but the next measuring stick really isn't until Oklahoma. You can get excited about a 38-17 win. You could, and I saw somebody on Twitter go, "This is going to be the week Nebraska turns it around." You don't know that. You don't know it because it's Georgia Southern. Yes. Well, I mean, I guess under your definition, I guess turning it around would be going out and spanking them, right? I mean, that would be turning it around.
Yeah, you would have to well, look at it this way. Georgia Southern did to
Morgan State
what Nebraska should have done to North Dakota. And beat them, what was it, 52-7?
59-7.
59-7.
Yeah.
So, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I'm looking at that North Dakota game going into the Georgia Southern game. And the thing that's going through my head, it's one of those, I get Anthony Grant and A.J. Allen busting off these nice runs late in the game to kind of tack 3 scores on and kind of blow it open there late. But I'm still sitting here going, okay, that's an FCS school that, I mean, they took it to Nebraska for almost 3 quarters. They dominated time of possession. I'm looking at Georgia Southern, and all of a sudden I'm sitting here going like, okay, Clay Helton actually did pretty good at USC.
Did okay.
I mean, he wasn't great.
I mean, he was Bo Pelini-like. How's that?
Okay, compared to what we got now, that's pretty fucking good.
That's fair. Touche. I'll give that to you.
I mean, shit, that's better. Bo Pelini was slightly better than Iowa average, because Iowa average is like 7.8 to 8.5 wins a year.
But you'll take that right now, wouldn't you?
Well, Yeah, we would right now. Bo Pelini averaged, I think he averaged.
He was 9 games, wasn't he?
He was like 9.5.
Yeah.
He was basically 1970s and 80s Tom Osborne. He averaged right there at like 9.5 wins a year over the, well, what was it, 7 years? 8 years?
I'm trying to think. Right
I mean,
around
it
there.
was 08 to 2008 to 2014.
Yeah.
So 7 years in Lincoln. Is my math right?
According to your report card, no.
No, I can't count. And nobody
And
said
don't
there's going
ask
to be
me.
math. Well, yeah, so 08 to 2014, there's 7 seasons. So he averaged 9.5 wins over 7 seasons, or roughly that. That's pretty damn good. That is not bad. And so I look at this where I'm sitting here and going like, okay, well, Clay Helton was Bo Pelini-esque. I'm sitting here going like, okay, well, that scares the shit out of me, because that means you've got a team that's going to be ballpark 9 to 10 wins a year coming in here, at least from a coaching quality measuring stick. And no, by the way, guess what? All those kids playing football up at North Dakota, it's a bunch of big farm kids from Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wisconsin, and Minnesota that filter in there. We're getting all the kids who didn't get the ride from Georgia or Troy or Alabama or Florida who wanted to stay in the South. That's who Georgia Southern has.
Did I see a stat? Did I see, and again, I don't have it on me, but did I see a stat the SEC went 14-0 this weekend?
I can't say I've seen that same stat, but who's the ESPN guy for this squirrely little skinny dude?
Well, that narrows it down. We got Matt Schick.
No, it's for the ESPN guy. No, not national guy. National ESPN.
Well, Matt's national.
The SEC guy.
Oh, well, Dari Noka's over there.
Not
Oh,
Dari.
no, you're talking to Paul Feinbaum.
Thank you. There we go. I've kind of tried to purge his name.
If you would have said skinny, bald little prick, I would have said
That's kind of what I said.
Yeah, but you didn't say older.
I said skinny little dude.
Yeah.
Of
Skinny
course,
little
compared
dude.
to me, everybody's a skinny.
Who, by the
little
way,
dude.
made a huge prediction that Ohio State was just going to blow out Notre Dame. That was a hell of a football game. There was
That was okay. So that, do you know what that is? That's Feinbaum setting up
being a shill for the SEC.
weeks worth of, Ohio State was supposed to blow these guys out only because you said they were going to, and they didn't. Therefore, he can now go back and just absolutely bag on Ohio State for the next few months.
Yeah, you're probably, because that's what he will be a shill for the SEC. Always has been a shill for the SEC.
Always has been, always will be. I mean, screw that guy. Guy's an idiot. Anyway, I'm looking at Georgia Southern, and what's got me worried is the fact that you've got a team that I don't think they're an unathletic team. I think there's going to be some really, really good athletes. I think they're going to be reasonably well coached. They're going to come into Lincoln with a quarterback who's played in Lincoln before last year as part of a somewhat overmatched team. And he's going to know how to handle that kind of pressure. And that worries the hell out of me when we just played an FCS team who took us deep into the second half.
And by the way, yes, the SEC won every game this past weekend. Every single game this past weekend. With the exception of LSU. So they won every game on Saturday, Sunday night, Florida State, which you were happy about.
That was a great game.
You were wearing your Seminole red and gold.
We had the whole family decked out. It was a fun game.
So LSU, the only SEC team to lose. South Carolina.
How about Brian Kelly?
Fuck Brian Kelly. I'm serious. That guy, I've never wanted a guy to fail more.
What?
Than I want Brian Kelly to fail.
Dude, you're a Notre Dame, you're a Golden Dome
First
lover.
of all,
you love him more than I
I always thought he was egotistical.
Yeah.
But it was the way he went to LSU. And that is, he shows up, puts on this fake Southern accent.
God, that was
doesn't exist.
I hate using the word cringe, but oh my God,
Yeah.
that was the most cringe thing.
And then he
ever.
does these videos dancing with spotlights and a disco ball.
Oh, with the recruits.
Yeah, it's just,
That is freaking weird.
It's just so disingenuous. I think he's got little man syndrome to Nick Saban. I really do. I think he thinks the only way he'll be able to compete and beat Nick Saban is if he gets in the same league. I'm telling you, listen, my daughters have lived in Louisiana. I have one that lives there now. I have one that lives in Mississippi. He's an East Coaster who worked in Michigan at a D2 school, went to Cincinnati, then went to Notre Dame. It's a cultural nightmare for him down there. I promise you this. He will not adapt.
So the other thing is that's kind of interesting after that game. Couple of things. One has been that if you listen to his post-game press conference, he was chucking guys under the bus left.
His coaching staff and his players.
Yeah, and the thing that was interesting to me was if you hop online, you look at college football social media, kind of the consistent theme that came out of all of that was like, oh yeah, well that's totally Brian Kelly. And I don't pay much attention to Notre Dame. I don't pay much attention to Brian Kelly. I never followed them on social media or within sports media in general. But the number of Notre Dame fans who are coming out and saying like, God, the guy was, anything that ever went wrong, he would always throw his players under the bus. He would talk about how they screwed up. This wasn't his issue. It was a player issue. If the players had only done what he had coached them to do, they would have been fine. They would have won the game. And I saw that afterwards where I saw some people who were trying to really put it into context. Because you had one of their, actually he's considered a fairly good wide receiver who's also the punt returner. You know, there were some compliment sandwiches where Brian Kelly was like kind of hammering the kid on his punt return ability, but then would compliment him on the wide receiver aspect of it. But it's still one of those things where you never throw a kid under the bus. And I think from a coaching standpoint, it's just, oh God. I mean, you just don't do it. One thing I always appreciated about Bo, so Nebraska played a series against Virginia Tech, home and away.
Yep.
Played out at played in Lincoln, and then the next year they played out at Virginia Tech.
I remember going to Blacksburg. That was crazy.
And so that was the game where late in the game, Nebraska has the lead. God, was that Tyrod Taylor at quarterback?
It was.
So you had Tyrod Taylor, really good running quarterback. Guy can run, guy can pass. You don't want to let him out of the pocket. And I remember late in the game on their final drive, Nebraska had him. It was either a third or fourth down. I think it was actually a fourth down. Tyrod rolls out to the offense's right, looks like he's going to take off and come running upfield. And it was Matt O'Hanlon was the safety for Nebraska, and actually quite a good safety. He ended up, I think, actually making all Big Ten that year. Matt breaks off of the guy he's covering, thinking that Tyrod's going to take off running. And Matt breaks off and runs up to tackle Tyrod Taylor. Taylor launches this freaking 40-yard bomb over O'Hanlon's head. Receiver catches it, gets knocked out of bounds at like the 3-yard line. And I think Nebraska actually took him to like fourth down on the goal line as well before Virginia Tech scored the winning touchdown. But a lot of people went back to that play where they were basically like, hey, freaking Sue was chasing Tyrod. He would have caught him. O'Hanlon should not have broken off of the guy, the receiver he was covering. And that's what cost Nebraska the game. Pelini got asked that after the game, like, hey, what are your thoughts on O'Hanlon and that play at the end of the game? And I remember Pelini just bristled up, and basically he didn't say fuck you to the reporter, but basically he was like, who are you talking about? And the reporter asked again, very politely. It was a good, I don't disagree with the question, but Pelini was basically, I'm not going to say the guy's name and throw him under the bus. We win as a team, we lose as a team. And Pelini refused to throw O'Hanlon under the bus when everybody knew they were talking about O'Hanlon. And Pelini was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not gonna blame this loss on one guy.
There's a code there, right?
Exactly. After that, you can disagree with me, but after that, as a guy who played the sport, I didn't give a rat's ass with what Pelini did. I didn't care if he was spitting shit into Martinez's face on the sideline against A&M. I didn't care what kind of meltdown he had when I saw that, because at that point in time, I was like, holy shit, this guy will literally he will look stupid before he throws a player under the bus. Then you got Brian Kelly, who's like, oh yeah, the players completely screwed this shit up and didn't listen to my coaching, which if they did, they would have won the game. It's like, if I'm a player for LSU right now, I'm just sitting there going like, man, fuck this guy.
So let's bring it kind of transition to the next topic, because I saw somebody on Twitter today say, hey, if you boo these players, don't you show up at Memorial Stadium. And then the same thing happened at Iowa. Spencer Petras got booed. The offense got booed, and it should have. It had like 166 yards of total offense. Spencer Petras was brutal. Here's my thought with booing, okay? I did a little research today. Booing actually dates back to like ancient Greek times.
I was going to ask, when did this start?
So they needed to, it was a form of approval or non-approval for when they asked the crowd to vote on like acts and plays that they liked. So like booing became customary in Greek culture. It didn't become a sporting event or a crowd thing until like the 1800s officially by the dictionary. Listen, you may not like booing, but what would you rather have them do? It's not necessarily that's like saying you can't boo the officials. At the end of the day, people have to have a way to voice frustration. And booing is probably the most politically correct way to do it, instead of going, the basketball, bullshit. I mean,
we're calling out guys. You fucking 72. You suck. Ass.
And so I think one guy put it in perspective. It was a musical artist who said, people boo because they have high expectations for you. So it's all how you look at it. If you're getting booed, that means the crowd has really high expectations.
They expected more.
They expect more. And the guy said, I've never been booed, which disappoints me, because either they didn't like me, because there's no way he could have actually lived up to the expectations of everybody 100% of the time. He's like, I've never been booed, and that bothers me. And it's all how you.
Do you remember who the performer was?
I forget what it was. I was just reading about it today, but it was one of the things where like,
that's a great take.
It's a great way to put it in perspective of like, it's all how you look at it.
Yeah. Which there's lines that you don't want to cross in terms of fan player interaction.
Yes.
I don't have a big problem with booing, and to a degree, it kind of depends on who you're directing it at. I think a lot of the time, I would probably say the vast majority of the time, when you're booing somebody, you're booing the coaching staff.
Yeah, or just the execution.
Yeah.
If you're on like 4th and 1 and you like try a play action pass and it's incomplete, most people are going to go, why didn't you just try to run it? I'm just using that as an example.
But that's a coaching decision
yes.
there, and that's idiotic. I have no problem with booing coaching decisions.
But see, nobody knows. Everybody's like, well, they don't know the difference. They're players. They're college kids. Well, first of all, When Casey Thompson says everybody on the starting lineup's getting paid six figures, they're not college kids anymore. They're professional athletes.
And that's the other line, is that when I got to the NFL, one, just me in general, I didn't mind getting booed. And B, I mean, you're getting paid to do that.
Yes.
You're getting paid to be there. I didn't mind getting booed, and I thought it was reasonably appropriate because, well, like I said, you're a professional. That's part of the game. I didn't like seeing players get booed in college. And that's a good point about the NIL thing, because these guys are now professionals.
Absolutely.
And so there's a standard that you want to live up to, both as a player and the expectations that the fans have upon you. And so I see it less and less as something that I disagree with. I mean, like I said, I used to be like, don't boo a guy in college. It's perfectly okay in the pros, though.
Now there's blurred lines.
Yeah, that's blurred tremendously. These guys are now in college. Most of these guys are pros.
And making more than most people that sit in that stadium.
Yeah, they're making a lot of money.
Yes.
And so I don't have, if you're going to boo, go ahead. I got to be honest, I don't have much of a problem with it. I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this. There's kind of I view booing to an extent, kind of like what you had said in regards to that musical artist. There's a failure to live up to an expectation, and that's why you're booing.
Yeah.
And I think if you view it that way, I don't have a problem with it. I do have a problem, let's say, as you're a player running off the field and some fan is sitting there yelling at you like, hey, Martinez, you effing suck. Like, yeah, that's out of line.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But I think the boo is kind of sort of a general consensus on you're not living up to expectations. I don't have a problem with that. Go for it. So, but I mean, there was stuff on Twitter. You and I were kind of talking a little bit about on Twitter. There was some discussion where, because I know a couple of people had called out Wyatt Lever after the punt play in the game, which, again, we talk about on Doc's Diagnosis. Not the most heads-up play by him. Now, some of that falls on him, some of that falls on coaching. But, I mean, a few people, I mean, there was one guy on Twitter who was like, yeah, he's in the argument for worst player to ever play at Nebraska. Well, that's a little fucking harsh, and especially over what we've seen out of Nebraska.
Or ever to
football.
get meaningful snaps, I believe it was, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, especially what we've seen.
Was it like Big Red
to
Copcast or something like that?
Yeah. But, I mean, we go back to, like, Callahan era, Riley era, chunks of the Frost era. Man, there's been some dudes who are just like, holy shit, I can't believe this guy. This is all we've got. Now, I'm not going to call those guys out on a somewhat public forum like Twitter or any other social media or this podcast.
Now, you know, I do the Iowa Hawkeye Cohen show, right? I called out Spencer Petras over the weekend.
Is somebody I think there's a difference between saying, hey, he's not playing well, or he's not playing
I said
well.
He sucked, and he did. He was horrible. A third-year starter should not be overthrowing your wide receivers on a 5-yard out. That's something you practice over and over and over again.
And I'll give you that. And so there's a lot of context to this that I think needs to be taken into account. But, I mean, the Wyatt Lever play is one of those like, okay, yeah, he needs to be more heads up with that. But at the same time, the coach has got to make sure the players have this understanding. Because here's the thing. We were still having our special teams coaches reviewing those things with us at the NFL level. I mean, I've talked before about how I got to the NFL and I was thinking it's going to be like this magic booklet of untold football knowledge that nobody else gets. It's like, no, you get to the NFL and it's, all right, let's review the basics again this week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, haven't we done that for the last 9 weeks? It's like, yes, we're reviewing the basics again. Like, every week we would go through this stuff. That was something we reviewed on a regular basis at the NFL level. That's something the coaches need to be reviewing with these guys so they don't make those kinds of mistakes.
All right, Dr. Rob, one of the big things that happened over the weekend, besides a great weekend of college football, was that on Friday, they decided the college football playoff would expand to 12 teams right now in 2026. Your thoughts? Right, so the 4 highest conference champions will get a bye. The next 2 highest conference champions will get an automatic bid, and then the rest are just the highest ranked teams.
I like it. Well, okay. Well, I've been on board with this for, ever since they started the quote unquote playoff, which was 4 teams.
Yep.
The one thing that shocked me all along is that they haven't gotten to this point sooner. That I thought they would take one look at the revenue that came from this, and then just the public interest that grows from having playoff football I thought we'd be at 12 teams by year 3 and 16 teams by year 8.
Do you think it would have if the conference commissioners would have been in charge and not university presidents and chancellors? Because I do think they do think about the academic aspect, the longevity of everything.
You hear that consistently, and it's been an argument for years and years and years and years against doing it. But then when you go and actually look at it, you realize, well, FCS does a playoff, and Division II does a playoff, and Division III does a playoff. Everybody else does a full playoff. So that whole academic argument that it's going to erode into the academics, this is cutting into finals time, it's a false argument. Everybody else does it. All these Division III liberal arts schools that are supposed to be these academic powerhouses, apparently they find out some way to do it. You look at, I think Division II does, I think, a 28-team playoff. We're talking 12. And I mean, out of those, I mean, at least when we've had the 4-team format, I mean, every year at least 2 of them have been SEC teams, and they don't even go to school down there except for Vanderbilt. So you can throw that academic argument out the window right there. But it's one of these things where I love it. I've wanted to see an expansion of this from the get-go. Kind of the little mini rant, which you and I talked about this a little bit, and we've touched on it in the past. Kind of the main argument that keeps getting floated out there and people keep putting out there and people keep complaining about is that this is going to dilute the regular season. This is going to make the regular season meaningless.
I don't agree with that.
Oh, I completely disagree with it. And I think anybody who uses that argument, I'm going to go asshole Rob mode here. Anybody who uses that argument's a fucking idiot. Sorry, Dave. They are. So now, here's why I say that.
I don't hear too many anymore, though.
I see a ton of that.
Really?
That was when they first announced this, that was the big argument that you saw from tons of fans and media was, well, we knew this was coming, but it's going to dilute the regular season. Now, the regular season games are going to become meaningless. It's going to take value away from the regular season. And people's argument to support that is, well, if you're a team and you have one loss, unless you're Georgia or Alabama, if you have one loss, now you're out of the playoff. Well, here's the thing. In the current system where you got 4 teams, who are those 4 teams going to be?
SEC.
No, give me specific. Name off 4 teams right off the bat.
Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia,
Clemson,
or just an at-large.
Yeah. So I mean, you've got this rotation,
but usually coming from the Big 12 or the Pac-12.
Yeah. So what we found is that if you limit if you limit the playoff to 4 teams, at least right now, and again, you go back 10, 12 years ago, it'd be Oklahoma and USC and Florida and Ohio State.
Yeah, if you go back
it's
almost 30 years, it would be Nebraska. Oh.
Yeah, fuck you. Do you know who it never would have been? Iowa.
That's
Never.
not true.
Yeah,
that's not true.
Yeah.
Iowa would have made it the year C.J. Beathard led them into an undefeated regular season. They would have been in the playoff under that scenario. They would have made it.
Okay, hold on a second. So they lost in the Big Ten,
but they were still ranked
game.
high enough because they played Michigan State close enough.
Would they have been 4th in the top 4?
No, because Michigan
They
State
didn't
was.
go because Michigan State beat them in the fucking game.
I know that, but what I'm saying is
they would not have gone.
Under the 12-man format.
Okay, yes.
That's what I'm getting
Which is why
at.
you need more teams. Sorry. I thought you were saying
I'm talking about under the new format.
Playoff. I'm sitting there going like,
okay,
dude, they fucking lost and they weren't in the top
that's
4.
Fair.
What
that's
the
fair.
hell?
That's fair. I'll give you that. Okay, I misunderstood you. You're right. Under the 4-team tournament, you're right. They would not have been there.
12-team, yeah. And guess what? I would have liked to have seen Iowa hit a little bit of a reset button, but shit, then they went and played Stanford and got nuked by Christian ran all over
But here's the
them.
deal. I don't think it changes the outcome all that much. I think there's a lot of people who think you're going to get a Cinderella or a huge upset in that second round where somebody's going to get knocked off. I don't think it changes the scenario that much.
I think you're still, for a while here, you're still going to see the same 2 teams in the title game. But I think one of those top 4 now is going to get, you're going to see one of those guys get knocked off. You're going to see.
It won't be number 1.
You're going to see.
It'll be number 4.
You're going to see an 08 Nebraska knock off a pretty good Georgia team.
Okay.
I mean, let me. Okay, look at it this way. We've had a more than one year where both the winner and loser of the SEC title game makes it into the playoff, correct?
True.
It happened this past year. It's happened prior to this past year. Well, in 2012, a pretty good but far from great Nebraska team knocked off the loser of the SEC title game.
True.
And I think it was at the Gator Bowl.
But the difference here is you have a team that's disappointed that it didn't want to go to the Gator Bowl, thought it had a better game. I mean, there's some mental aspects to this.
There is, but I think you see that in playoffs as well. Oh, we didn't get the top seed. Oh, we don't have that first game at home. Or
if you make the playoffs and have that feeling, then you don't belong there. I'm sure if you have that feeling.
And I get it, but that's the reality of it. And I think we're going to see we're going to see some pretty good upsets. I still think you're going to see like an Alabama versus Ohio State national title game or a Clemson Georgia national title game. Those top 2 are still going to match up.
I mean, your upsets will come in that first week. I think those teams that get the 4 byes are still going to be probably your upper echelon teams.
I say that, I get that, but at the same time, it's interesting because if you look at the NFL, some of those teams that don't play that first week, don't play that first round playoff game, that get that bye, they kind of come in and they're coming off a little bit of a layoff, and sometimes that does screw up your time.
The interesting part about this whole thing is that Notre Dame will never ever get a bye, ever, because it can't win
unless they join a conference.
But will that be a strong enough push to get Notre Dame to join a conference? I don't think it is.
I don't know, but we'll see what happens. Yeah. Right now, money, first round bye in a playoffs, everything's pushing against them to join a conference. Anyway, my point on the value thing. So the value argument is that having an expanded playoff decreases the value of the regular season. And in my opinion, it only decreases that value for those 4 top teams that would have made the playoff if it was only a 4-team playoff. Because before, look at it this way. Look at, 2015 Iowa.
Yeah.
I'm going to say let's call the Big Ten title game a regular season game. I know it's kind of postseason. We're going to call that a regular season game, okay?
Okay.
Just for the point of the argument here. Iowa loses that, and under the 4-team model, that game was huge.
Yes.
And I get it. It devalues it maybe for Iowa that, okay, now they get to go to the playoff. But I mean, if it's a 12-team playoff, now that game has value to them. The regular season has value.
Yes.
Take a team. So the teams that are going to make it if it's a 4-team playoff in perpetuity. Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and then you've got that occasional run where the Pac-12 rises up and sends an Oregon or a Washington or maybe a USC if Pete Carroll comes back. Does that sound like a
yeah?
That's all you're going to see. There is zero value to anybody else's regular season except those teams. Georgia Tech doesn't matter. Florida doesn't matter. UCF in 2017 doesn't matter. Auburn doesn't matter. LSU outside of the Joe Burrow era, your regular season games don't matter. Michigan outside of last year
doesn't matter.
Your regular season doesn't matter. There is zero value to anybody's regular season unless you're one of those top 4 to 6 teams in the country that are going to get in a 4-team playoff format. All of a sudden, by expanding the playoff to 12 teams, guess what? Shit. Now Florida's regular season has value.
Absolutely. Because even if you don't make say you don't even make your conference championship game, you can and the SEC knows this.
Yeah.
One of those extra teams
you might
get
in. Central Florida potentially now gets like that group of 5 team that has that mind-blowing good season. Now it's Coastal Carolina. It's not Central Florida
Now it gets
anymore.
interesting, though, is
Utah last year.
What's the 6th conference? That's the interesting part, because with BYU, Cincinnati, and Houston going to the Big 12, the Big 12 is going to be sitting pretty good to have.
It's conference champs still going.
With USC and UCLA leaving the Pac-12, it becomes interesting on what that 6th conference is going to be as far as the highest ranked team.
Until something happens with Oregon, Washington, and the Arizona schools, the Pac-12 still is
did you see
a Power 5 conference.
The guy from the San Jose Mercury News had this over the week, and he said, listen, Ohio State's put its foot down and said no more expansion because there's no value with any of the teams in the Pac-12. Because Oregon's trying like hell to get in. Ohio State's saying, we're not sharing any more money. We'll share money with Notre Dame. We're not sharing money with anybody else.
You don't share money with Notre Dame. Notre Dame comes in and brings you money.
Well, Ohio State's saying, okay, we're going to get $100 million a year.
Oregon, Washington, that's maybe a share package.
Yes. They're not going to go down and decrease that by another $20 million. They're not going to do it. They're saying no more. And with this 12-team playoff, I don't know if you need to expand anymore. If Notre Dame wants it, you let them in.
Hold on. Expand the playoff or expand conferences?
The conferences. If you've agreed to this for a longer period of time.
That's a great point.
You don't need to expand the conferences anymore. And I think that's why Ohio State's going, if you got a 12-team league, you're going to agree to this for a certain amount of years. 7 years?
Big 12 can pick up a few schools.
Yep.
Pac-12. Well, honestly, I think what ends up happening is I think the Pac-12 ends up, I think you've got some schools that do everything in their power to join the Big 12. And then I think the remnants try and form a powerful group of 5 conference.
Then it's called the Mountain West.
Yeah. If you have, let's say you've got the Arizona schools, you've got Utah.
If I'm the Big 12, if I'm the Big 12, I'm taking Arizona State.
You got Washington and Oregon.
If I'm the Big 12, I'm lining up, I'm saying Arizona State, Washington, Oregon, Stanford will take you. Arizona, you're out. Phoenix
God, that's harsh, but it's
Phoenix is a bigger market.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking for value there, right?
No, I totally get it.
So that's what it. That's what it comes down.
Cal brings you zero value.
Cal brings you nothing.
Great GPA, excellent engineering degrees.
Would you take Stanford or Cal? I'd take Stanford in a second.
Oh, 100%.
Yep.
Well, but I mean, Stanford has good sports. They've got men's and women's basketball are good. Women's volleyball is good. They got a great wrestling team. On a good year, David Shaw's punching out some pretty good football.
Dr. Rob, always good catching up with you.
Oh, my God. We covered a lot of ground.
We covered a shitload. And
the 12-team playoff brings value
to college football.
It doesn't dilute it. It brings value.
So here's the deal. You're listening to this podcast on Podbean right now. You can watch it later in the week on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel because you're going to see this podcast. You're going to see the doctor's diagnosis. You're going to see Behind the Point Spread with Scott Spreitzer. That's Wednesday night at 8. And that's live.
That is more knowledge and data than even I can process.
I'm telling you, it's good shit. It really is. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, follow Dr. Rob on Twitter at DocTalkSports, follow me at Travis Creates. Want to thank Betfred Sportsbook because without them, this podcast really is impossible. And all the cool shit we're doing now, which is lots of stuff. Now I got to thank our producer, Owen Justice, who's back there he's like a TV director back there now.
I'm like watching on your computer screen. I'm watching the camera feed flip back and forth.
He's the visionary. Right?
Are you paying him?
I'm gonna have to start probably because he's not living here really anymore. He got rid of his bed in the other room, so now he's not shacking up here anymore. He does come here and eat. I do want to thank Connor Orr from Orr, Horgan, and Plenty. Want to thank Husker Hounds. And again, want to thank Betfred Sports. Thank you so much, Brian Bennett and the crew at Betfred Sports. Download the Betfred Sports app today. Use the promo code DocTalk.
Which I will say, if you want to interact online with people, dude, Brian will he'll jump on. He'll answer questions. He'll give you information. He loves interacting with the fans Betfred is an interactive social media presence.
It's just part of the customer service they provide when you download their app. He's Dr. Rob Zatechka. I'm Travis Justice. We'll see you next week, and we'll talk to you next week on the Doc Talk podcast presented by Betfred Sportsbook.